Hi, it's Victor. Take a seat and make yourself comfortable because today I'm about to do a reading of Mr. Taylor's lifetime. Now, you might not be the type of person to just sit down before such long narrations as these, but give it a thought and give it a try. It doesn't cost you anything at all. Well, except time, of course, to just relax over a cup of coffee, perhaps, and listen to a tale that had begun deep into the mountains of Kunduz, Afghanistan. Now, of course, those who have been here long enough will tell you we have been through hell and back already. Well, not in that sense. It's just the beginning. Things are just warming up. We've indeed traversed the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. We've been hijacked by a suspect aircraft, even separated twins in South Africa, breakfasted with cadavers in the wee hours, and eventually survived Harvard Medical School. But it's taken us about 9 years. Now, for most students who manage to survive through medical school will tell you graduation day will certainly be a blast. The summit of such event as this one will obviously conclude by taking an oath to uphold the sanctity of life and save lives. Such was the event undertaken at Harvard Medical School on the 22nd of September 2001. John Taylor had backed, of course, his college degree as a neurosurgeon, and as though that wasn't enough, he could reconstruct fractured skulls, just as one Dr. Vivian Insidor, you remember, and reconstructed his 9 years ago. Oh yes, but here is something much more disturbing. John Taylor is obviously on sign-out mode. Let that be clear. He awaits a Mr. Raphael Jones of Ridgeway Taxis who is supposed to drive him to Boston Logan International Airport so he could catch a plane to Baltimore, Maryland. And you know, Johns Hopkins Hospital awaits him, for those who listened to the previous vlog. But he leaves without telling his girlfriend, Julia, of his departure plans and has absolutely no idea of the hell that awaits him next. So I'm gonna pick up from where I left in the previous vlog. And you all remember the last sentence was, I was who I was, an ex-German combat soldier trained in Vietnam. So I'm gonna proceed. and escaped from camp in Saigon after 3 years of elite hardcore training. Saigon is the capital city of Vietnam, for those who would like to know. Munich was the city and flown back to, kidnapped by the STM men and helicoptered to Kunduz, Afghanistan for indoctrination in extreme versions of jihad. Mr. Howard Green and Stephen Blame were the top officials of the Shrine Tango movement. Mr. Chris Coons, Jerry Sparta, Boaz Igor, and a couple of other radicalized fellows, staunch members of the extremist movement. The men I remembered were men of steel, not humans but creatures of terror. My fight with the hijackers aboard the 2A647 aircraft was now a stain in my memory. To explain the complete recovery from the retrograde amnesia, save my training as a neurosurgeon, there never would have been a greater task. But the fact was, in the name of wonder, my memory was back. So I'm gonna proceed to chapter 2. 2 hours later, the briefest episodic memory gaps left me confused in my own reflections. I had expected it though. Maybe the scars just ran so deep. But my desire was not to put up a fight of any kind. A packet of Tootsie Rolls in my hand, I started towards the living room. This motivation had been excited by momentary, memories of some lady in the women's hostels with whom I had survived the horrible crash back in 2001. At least, that was an overwhelming sense of freedom. I sat on the sofa and gave my mind to survive. A glass of wine excited feelings of deception in the air. The alcoholic lubrication made me see things in tremendous abstraction. But let's just say, it was like that moment when things took a different turn and you begin to understand the calculus of the game. Deeper reflections of this realization, though, would have excited the calm with which I consumed the remaining wine if they had not felt weaker. I started off the sofa and made across the room and out the exit door. A brief walk along the hostel corridor DXC 112 sneaked me into the parking lot. It was 17:45 p.m. A taxi cab appeared along Kingsway Road. Then it entered the parking lot through 11XD Eastern Wing driveway. EWXD, they called it. It was already 10 to 6. I waited. It was soothing. By reputation, I was elusive and private, like a giant squid. A bouncy, swollen man of a sawdusty fragrance called out, "John!" Raphael was his name. Such an alarmingly large, pig-headed creature that I quite trembled on spot. "Yes, this is John. John Taylor. Pleased to meet you." "Sir," said Raphael, "the pleasure is all mine. I'll get the baggage. Mind my giving a hand?" "That would be great," I said. "I have 3 of them, in fact." So Raphael Jones offered to give me a hand with the luggage. So I was pleased that he actually offered to do that, because I had 3 baggage to take with me. This late afternoon company bore a certain comfort on my part that I couldn't help but enjoy. Not because I was going to squeeze myself out of Massachusetts without informing Yulia, my girlfriend, you remember? No. She had expressed her pleasure in my securing a position as an intern anywhere out of Boston for a change. So you realize that Julia was pro my decision to move out of Boston after my graduation. For that reason, one, I had announced my engagement to her a month before my graduation. And two, I was going to surprise her with the news regarding my situation at Johns Hopkins the very same day I had graduated from med school. Time had stolen on, kept and observed, and in fact, up until then, there was no loose ends to impede my surprising her. I pointed across the men's quarters. "Over there, let's go." "Alright," replied Jones. It took us 3 minutes to the halls, a minute up the flight of stairs. I grabbed the largest of the baggage, and hurled it up my shoulders. Jones took the rest and staggered downstairs. A very unstable, stout man he was, this Raphael Jones. A hard-featured gentleman with quite a frightening nose and a native sagacity. He must have been a favorite among his species of taxi drivers. I'm obliged to recollect that our teamwork was a moving spectacle for extraordinary minds, lest I should appear to exaggerate the intensity of my confusion mood. Medical school had made me stout and chubby. That I knew very well. Not that I mean to say these were the only impressions I acquired as a medical student, no. I had learned never to embrace the emptiness in the sorrows and pains to my past. Yet, in the name of wonder, what I suffered inside was certainly nothing compared to what I underwent within. I'll say that my confusion mode made me much more comfortable than I can genuinely confess. "Back left," Jones requested. "I'll secure your luggage." So Jones asked me to sit in the back left of his vehicle. I replied, "Thanks," and slid myself at the rear seat. I buckled myself down and eased my head on the rest. We drove along Kingswell Street, Baldwin Street, and Beacon Street. A minute after Beacon Street, we turned left. Dame Street, number 9 appeared. "Jones, may I have your attention, please?" He kept still, wouldn't flinch. I wondered why. Again I called out, "Jones!" He faced me this time round. He faced me, but without a word, turned away again. "New in town?" I asked. "Everything is connected to everything, Mr. Taylor," he said. "It's the butterfly effect, if you will." That response excited wires of latent uneasiness in me. "There is a shorter drive to Boston Logan, isn't there, sir?" I asked. Again he turned, faced me and turned away. We drove up haphazardly and made a left turn. 5 minutes later, we entered Ridgeway Lane. "Mr. Jones, I'll miss my flight." My concern fell into deaf ears. He spoke no more. In total silence, we drove for a couple of minutes. Then we stopped. Jones engaged the locking actuator. He locked the doors. He locked me inside. The rear doors clicked twice. The latches were up. I was trapped, locked inside. He spun and faced me. My fists clenched. It happened so fast. What the hell? "You are a pain in the ass, Mr. Taylor. You don't know that. Drop it already." He appeared undeterred. Staunch STM soldiers are never. Very well, guys. That marks the end of my today's vlog. See you on the next one. Goodbye.